Welcome. You're listening to Beyond the Front Door podcast with Lindy and Rhea, and we are real estate agents here in Cheyenne, Wyoming at Peak Properties. And we bring you real estate stories that inspire you, make you laugh, cry, cringe. All the
of the
things.
above.
Yeah, we put the real in real estate.
Yes.
And we're very excited for our guest today. And so it's my pleasure to introduce everyone who already knows who he is, I'm sure. Steve Willoughby. And so I just wanted to take a second to share a little bit about Steve with our listeners, just so they know who we're talking with today. Steve Willoughby began his career in 1977. He's worked as a property manager, appraiser, sales associate, and a managing broker. Because of his experience, he understands the problems, concerns, and questions of real estate professionals as they pursue their career goals. Today, most of Steve's time is devoted to providing education and motivational seminars to real estate professionals. Steve has spent over 130 days in front of an audience this year. Wow. That's awesome.
It's a lot of the year.
Yeah, he has received warm evaluations for his innovative approach to real estate education. Steve taught his first real estate pre-license class in 2002. From 2002 to the present time, Steve has taught pre-licensing and continuing education classes for real estate licensees. The National Association of Realtors honored Steve by bestowing him the status of Realtor Emeritus for 40 years of valuable and lasting contributions to the real estate community, which is awesome. Good for you for sticking with it for that long. He was a senior instructor for the Wyoming Association of Realtors Professional Standard Program for 10 years and has served as an advisor to many local boards of realtors. Steve has served in a variety of leadership roles for local, state, and national associations of realtors and was honored by his local board as Realtor of the Year. Awesome. Steve believes that to maximize the benefits of his presentations, students must be involved. I agree. Mm-hmm. And he combines a unique blend of activities, discussion, and applications to illustrate his objectives and promote a positive learning environment. And that's why we have Steve here today, because you continue to help us realtors do our job and get better and learn about all of the, the changes to the field.
Well, yes, thank you for having me here today. It's quite an honor, actually, to be with the two of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
We feel honored to have you.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, I haven't ever taken a class from you.
Shame on you.
I know. I was signed up to do
I.
my brokers with you, and then I had a conflict, and I had to switch weeks, and so then it didn't align with the class that you were taking.
Shame on
But
you.
I know, but I hear that I'm missing out. Really,
we'll get in
honestly.
there. Yeah, we'll be in, I'm sure, for something.
Did you take a class from
I
Steve
didn't,
yet?
so I took my class during the pandemic. I actually sat in my house on a Zoom class with Bruce.
So
is
did
who
I,
went
yeah.
through. Mm-hmm.
When I was getting my brokers, I
That
sat
had to be
with Bruce.
brutal.
Oh, it was so hard.
Well, I will tell you, my office faced my street, and there were homes being built across the street. So during the whole class, I was watching builders build two homes in front of me. So it was, I like to multitask when I'm listening anyway, so that provided a little bit of relief, I suppose.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Anyway, yeah, but Zoom is definitely hard. It's not when you talk about, combining, students being involved. Zoom definitely makes that tougher.
Oh, it does.
Yes.
And, I think over the years I've had to adapt to a lot of different learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
And then going from doing live classes to doing something where the students are remote is really difficult.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, we're wondering if you'd be willing to share just a little bit about, were you born in Cheyenne? What brought you to Cheyenne? Kind of what got you going in the field of real estate?
Well, I came out of college at 23 and I didn't have any money, didn't have
As
a
none
job.
of us do.
So my dad was in real estate, so I went into real estate thinking, I'll just take a couple of years here and, see where I want to go. And then the next thing I knew, it's 47 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was born in Casper, moved
Okay.
to Cheyenne about 15 years ago. And of course, we're neighbors.
Yes, we are.
And I like Cheyenne. I think Cheyenne is a much friendlier city than Casper. And I don't know if it's because of the military influence here or just because Casper has such a transient population with all of the mineral activities that go on there.
I would agree with that in that I'm from Gillette, and
Oh.
Gillette and Casper both have that transient energy, people kind of coming in and out. And I would venture to say that all those communities are very caring, loving communities. Everybody sort of pulls together for each other. But I will say, on a one-to-one basis, Cheyenne does sometimes seem a little friendlier. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to be an hour away from downtown Denver.
Yes.
Hour and 20, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
We talk about that all the time on here, that the location, is really key. So,
So yesterday, Steve did a Zoom call with real estate agents all across the state of Wyoming.
Correct.
And I heard it was fantastic and gave them a lot of information that they needed, especially recently with the changes that are happening in our field. And so I think, is that where you want to start, or what would you like to tell our listeners?
Well, I think that you're going to see, buyers and sellers, real estate professionals are going to see some changes in the way we do business.
Right.
It all started probably back in about 2019 when there were sellers who felt like they were being overcharged for services. And so from there were some lawsuits filed against some of the larger real estate companies. Then in 2020, there was actually a class action suit filed by a group of home sellers. And they filed the suit against the National Association of Realtors and also against some of the very largest firms in the real estate industry. So that class action suit took about 4 years to get to a jury. A jury heard the evidence and awarded the plaintiffs, the home sellers, $1.8 billion in damages.
wow.
So as a result of that, that got everybody's attention.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was a jury trial, and the jury heard the evidence and felt like some of the policies that the National Association of Realtors had were actually an infringement on the antitrust laws. And so it became an issue that home sellers were saying, listen, I'm being overcharged for real estate services, primarily because the listing agent is sharing their commission with the buyer's broker. So there was that objection that why should I, as a seller, be paying the fee for a buyer's broker? So that was really the basic background of what happened with the changes that we see in our industry today.
That's
What-
a really good
That was
summary.
it is a very good summary. I saw something today that just said that, and I want to just get your opinion. It just said that these changes aim to increase transparency, promote competition, and provide more choices for consumers when working with real estate agents. By allowing for more flexibility in how real estate services are offered and priced, these changes could benefit realtors and the consumer in the long run. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like these changes are good or warranted, or, are they going to help us and help consumers?
So I think over my tenure as a real estate professional, we've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Some of them have been fantastic, and others just kind of go by the wayside. And I think part of that is because it's what consumers want from real estate professionals, not necessarily what the court tells us to do or our state statutes. It's because what consumers really want. And I think today sellers feel like maybe they are paying fees that are in excess of what they should be paying. But as I look back over my real estate career, the paradigm, the model in real estate has been that real estate company lists a property for sale, a buyer comes with a real estate agent from another company, and the buyer and seller come to an agreement. and then two brokers split the fee, the fee that the seller was actually paying to the listing broker.
Right.
We may see a change in that. We may see sellers who are demanding maybe a lesser rate of commission, and then the broker working with the buyer is being paid by the buyer rather than sharing a commission with the listing agent.
I think there's been some concern that that's going to make it harder for especially first-time home buyers to purchase a home.
Oh, it absolutely will. You guys, you understand that many first-time home buyers don't have a lot of cash.
Right. We're thinking even closing costs are negotiated, and those change depending on what market we're in. Sometimes we have a hard time even requesting that
Sure.
to be paid by a seller. So now we want to ask for them to cover what they were covering.
Well, and that's why I go back to the model that we've had for so many years, which is that the brokers split a commission.
Right.
And whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the model we've worked under for so many years. So today that model is going to be shifting.
Yeah.
So just like a change in how we think about the whole process.
Exactly. And some of the financing programs that are out there today are now changing to coordinate with this lawsuit and the requirements under the lawsuit. The Veterans Administration, for as long as I can remember, prohibited the veteran from paying the buyer's broker's commission. Now, where that ever came from, I have no
It
idea.
is
Yeah, I
interesting.
wonder. It is
Yeah.
interesting because I've wondered, is that where this all came from before? Is that why? Because of the VA loan?
Well, I don't. That could have been part of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, but I mean, VA has now changed the rules, and the buyer can pay their broker a fee. And then people on the secondary mortgage market, Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're now looking at their loans and saying, well, is there a way that the buyer could actually finance the buyer's broker's fee? So we may see a change there also.
Yeah.
I would think that would almost have to happen for first-time home buyers or for people that, when it's so much money to purchase a home, they need to be able to afford, their own representation. I was on a listing appointment yesterday visiting with the homeowner, and, to backtrack a little bit, you can, when you get online and look at people talk or listen to people talk, and they're like, I'm just going to go to the listing agent. That's somehow going to save me money, or, save everybody money if I just go to the listing agent. But I think what doesn't get talked about is the importance of both the buyer and the seller having their own representation. And we were talking about this. I was kind of discussing this whole process during this listing appointment. And the homeowner said, I want the buyer to have their own agent. I don't want the intermediary situation. I don't want, we don't allow dual agency here, but she's like, I want that other agent to have their own representation, and I want to have you be representing me. And so it is important, for both to have it, but we, just the idea that you're just going to go, some people are maybe comfortable with going straight to the listing agent, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to save you money, and it's not for everybody, so it's going to be interesting to see.
What do you say? I mean, you're doing most of your education is to real estate agents.
Correct.
Right. So this will be like real estate agents listen to this as well as the public.
Yes.
So I think sometimes some of our listeners, this might be the first time they're even hearing about
it.
I mean, if they haven't listened to it. We had Buck Wilson on here with the Wyoming Realtors, and he talked about the lawsuits. That was earlier. So if someone's watched that episode, they knew a little bit of what was happening. But now we are
In it.
right? And we have to change everything by August 17th.
Correct.
Although we're already
in the middle of it, which
Yeah.
is good because
Yeah.
we need to get going. But August 17th is the date when everything changes. What do you think the biggest changes from this?
I think the biggest change is that buyers are going to be asked to sign something before the real estate professional shows them a house.
Yes.
I think those days that, where the buyer would call us on the phone and say, I want to see this house this afternoon, and we would jump in our car and drive out there and show them the house. I think those days are gone. I think that real estate professionals are going to have to start doing some kind of an interview before they start showing people houses. Because truly, part of the lawsuit said that, hey, going to have something signed by that buyer before you actually show them a house. And that's typically going to be an exclusive right to buy contract, to where you would be representing them in the real estate transaction. So those old days of just showing a house, I think those days are
over.
dwindling.
Going back to like when you get your real estate license, I remember, I mean, I got mine 11 years ago, but that was the whole idea, right? Was to get the buyer's agency signed right away anyways.
Correct.
So, I mean, but we didn't have to do it before we showed a property. We could show one or two properties, let them choose to work with you, and then have them sign it, right? But wasn't that the intention from Wyoming when we were in class learning that? You were like, I don't know, I think Bruce said you get this thing signed right away.
Well, and
so that a buyer knows, like, I cost money. I have to be paid by someone at some point if you buy a house.
Well, and it goes beyond just the money part. I think it goes to, the buyer truly understanding what the real estate professional can do for them.
Right.
As far as, assisting them with deadlines and those types of things. So I think that is one of the big parts of having that exclusive right to buy contract, is it sets out what the real estate professional can actually do for them and what they can't do for them.
Right. And we've had that in Wyoming for a while.
Like forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so some states have not. And so this is a very big change for them, where in Wyoming, it's a little change as far as like getting it signed up front.
Yeah, it probably does. And that's only going to help the consumer, right? That we formalize this process, that we are for sure, in fact, sitting down and visiting with the buyer before we go show them properties, having them, decide to sign, even if it's just for that day or just that property, just to kind of get them started and getting to know you or whatever the case is. But no matter what, it's going to encourage the conversation about what all the realtor does, just like you're saying, instead of skipping right ahead to showing the home.
And I think, by doing that, also having that interview up front, it demonstrates our value to the consumer, whether it be a buyer or a seller. I think we probably have missed a lot of opportunities to help people understand what our value truly is in the transaction.
Obviously, because we have people thinking we're getting overpaid. So we obviously have not communicated that well enough.
Well, and they think that all we do is open doors.
Yeah.
It's easy, right?
Yeah.
Well, and at our own fault, we made it seem that way.
Made it look easy.
Well, and have you noticed that when somebody makes something look easy, you're going, I could do that myself.
Well, look at all the people who think that. They go, I'm going to get my real estate license. This is awesome. You just show a house and sell it and make a bunch of money. No stress at all.
That's right.
Yeah. We don't know anything about that.
So I think that'll be the biggest change, is that buyers will see real estate professionals saying, before I show you that house, why don't you come down to the office and let's talk? Or maybe you have that initial interview where you get them with a lender, get them pre-qualified, demonstrate your value, show them what you can actually do for them in the real estate transaction.
Yeah. And I think that was the ultimate goal, right, was to improve that communication and demonstrate value, just like you're saying. I mean, of course, there's other goals beyond that, but you talked about how over the years there's been changes to the real estate profession over the years, and I'm assuming most of those changes were in an attempt to be in the best interest of everybody involved.
Oh, I think so, but ultimately it boils down to what the consumer is willing to accept and what the consumer is going to be rejecting. I remember one business model when I had first started in real estate, and the business model was that the owner showed the property themselves, negotiated with the buyer, and then when they came to an agreement, they came to the real estate professional to prepare the offer and see it to closing. So that business model did not go I mean, it went for a couple of years, but ultimately consumers said,
I don't want to do that.
yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
to show my house. I don't want to be in the house with a stranger.
Or
Well-
negotiate for yourself. Like
Yeah.
some people that might make them very uncomfortable.
True. Yeah.
Well, and it kind of goes to the for sale by owner. You hear people talking a little bit about for sale by owner. And I think that market represents about 10% of total transactions, if I recall, from the National Association of Realtors. Like it's less than 10% of for sale by owners. And I'm assuming it's for this exact reason. It is a little uncomfortable to have people in your home or to be negotiating these things. And that's where conflict can happen and all sorts of things. So the importance of a realtor. Yeah. So what were some of the points that you hit on yesterday during your seminar that you think would be valuable to talk about here today?
Well, demonstrating our value and making sure that consumers understand they have choices. You've probably experienced it yourself where a seller may say to you, what's the standard rate of commission in Cheyenne, Wyoming? And of course, there is no standard rate, but I think the public has that perception. And part of what we can do is to help people understand that, yeah, you have choices.
Yes, it's negotiable.
It's strictly negotiable. Strictly negotiable, Mr. Seller, if you would like to pay the buyer's broker in the transaction. Strictly negotiable if you want to offer concessions to a buyer. We've seen a lot of sellers who are now paying discount points to help buyers buy down the interest rate on their loans. So you can still do that. I mean, that's nothing that's changed with the transaction itself. I think the other thing that we talked about yesterday had to do with the whole process of how we're going to be showing houses to people in the future. If somebody comes to your open house, they don't have to sign anything while they're at the open house. If you run into somebody at the grocery store and they say, what about that property over there on Meadowland Drive? You don't have to have them sign an exclusive right to buy contract before you tell them about that. So preliminary conversations with people are still fine. I mean, you can still do the thing at the grocery store where you help people to understand what you do. And your open house is the same thing. But once you start putting them in the car, you're going to have to ask them to sign something.
Yep.
Do you think that open houses will increase then? I wonder if consumers will want to go to more open houses before they commit to someone.
Yeah.
Good point.
I know, I just think
Good
maybe,
point.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
So how do you feel about open houses?
I don't like them. And not that I don't, the only reason why I don't like them is because they're just hit and miss. Like sometimes no one comes and sometimes it's just the neighbors. But if it's useful and buyers are really genuinely looking at homes and wanting to gather information for themselves, then I think that's great. But in my experience, it hasn't really been that way. I don't know. Rhea does much more successful open houses than I do.
I do a
She
lot
did
of
one
open
month
house-
where she did 30 open houses in 30 days.
I did.
Good for
Thank you.
you. Good for you.
And being newer to the industry over the last few years, I've heard stories of realtors doing like all day open houses. Never will I ever probably do that unless the consumer demanded that. But I do enjoy open houses because it gives me an opportunity to listen to the consumer and what they're looking for and kind of what's happening in the world. Back in June, Lindy and I were talking about this because I had one weekend in particular where it was nonstop Colorado plates showing up to my open houses and a lot of concern about the refugee crisis happening in Colorado, and, families looking at what that meant for them and considering a move. And so while you hear about it on the news, when you're standing in an open house and you got Colorado plates lining up, showing up to your open house because they're looking at moving here, you learn a little bit about what's going on in society, and you learn a little bit about what people are looking for. And so that is one of the reasons why I like to do them, is it gives me a chance to hear what they personally want and what they're looking for. But truth be told, I keep them to about an hour if I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
An hour. If you really want to see that house, you're going to make it over there in that hour to see the house. And so I've seen stories of 7 and 8 hour open houses, and I don't know that I
One
would
time
ever
I
do
had a
that.
6-hour open house
Oh my gosh.
at the request of my seller.
Oh, it's a long time.
Boy, that's a long time.
It is.
It's a long time to sit in someone else's house.
Yes.
It is.
It's not
It's a long
always the
time.
most comfortable,
How did you
especially when they
eat?
live there.
How did you eat?
I didn't. I just sat.
you just
yeah,
didn't.
nope.
Oh,
I just-
goodness.
And that's another model that's changed over the years and changed depending upon the market itself. I remember 10 years ago in Jackson, Wyoming, they did not do public open houses. I mean, it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then, of course, here during the pandemic, we had to kind of
Adjust.
curtail those things. So that's the exciting thing about real estate. It's always something.
It is
it's
always
something
changing,
new.
and you're always
Yeah.
trying to figure out what people want and what's the next big thing.
Correct. Yeah.
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 Whether it's technology or if it's, the way we show houses, I guess. Or how many open houses we do. I feel like open houses have increased a lot. But I think it's because we stopped doing them during COVID.
Sure.
And then they came back like full force.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there for a little while I was maybe one of the only ones doing them. But I was doing them. And you're right, there are a lot of them now. So, and like I said, I think they're very beneficial to the consumer, and I think it gives an opportunity for consumers to go around and actually visit with realtors and find one that they feel like they connect with and that they think that they trust, that they can do business with. So I also think it's good for that as well.
Rhea, you mentioned, when we were talking about having buyers sign that exclusive right to buy contract, and you mentioned, doing it for one day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can do it for one day. You can do it for a single property.
Yes.
To where they kind of get to dance with you before
Yes.
before they actually hire you full time, I guess.
And I've been saying that to some of the clients I'm working with that have went ahead and signed with me, but I do tell them, if you decide to purchase property in another area, or you've got, somebody that looking, just because these changes happen doesn't mean you have to lock in with a realtor right away before you know them. And that's where I was explaining just exactly that, just sort of like an FYI that I'm explaining to them. If you're out looking for homes in a different town or wherever, don't feel like just because these changes happen that you have to commit to a realtor sight unseen,
Well,
essentially,
hopefully that's
or your
not
first
what realtors start saying.
Yeah, it needs to be, they need to be informed that they can, they can agree for that property or for that day, but they don't have to, it doesn't have to be a long commitment to get started until you get to know that realtor. And I want them to get to know that realtor. We're not all for everybody, and so while I want to help you, maybe I am the person for you, or maybe I'm not, and I want you to find the person that you trust.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was something else I was going to ask about on this line, and I can't think of it right at the moment. But this, it's going to be interesting as we transition through this. Like, I kind of think that there's this idea that on August 17th, everything's just going to magically transform, right? And I love listening to folks like you talk about it's not so black and white, and it's not going to be this, like, everything's just going to be magical as of August 17th. Like, all of us in the profession are going to need a little time to work out the kinks, and that's what I was even saying in my listing appointment yesterday. I'm like, we're still working through this, and, all of us, our intentions are good, and we're trying to follow by what the changes are, but it is a work in progress. It's not going to be just an immediate switch.
Well, and if you go back to home sellers, I'm sure you've both had the situation where you went on a listing appointment, the seller said, well, I'm going to talk to two other real estate people.
Yes.
So they were interviewing people, and I think that buyers need to be doing the same thing.
Correct.
And that's not always been the case in the past. It was like, well, Lindy started showing me houses, so I got to stay with her.
Right.
So I think it's a matter of trying people out and like you said, finding that best fit for the buyer and also for the real estate professional.
I try to think about, because it's hard to like remove yourself, we have to remove ourselves and what we think about real estate. But I tried to think about it as far as like a car. Like you're going to buy or you're going to get a lawyer or a car or something, you know what I mean? Like you would want to, before you signed something, you'd be like, I got to make sure that I like you because I'm
right. Like let's say you're getting a divorce or you're fighting for custody of your children or something.
Yeah,
you're going to go around and
interview
interview attorneys. You're maybe not going to just pick the first one because your children and your family, I mean, if there's anything above a house purchase, it probably is children and a family, and then a house purchase because it's such a big financial investment. And so, yeah, I know people go out and interview attorneys all the time and don't just necessarily go with the one. So we want you to interview us and find one that's going to work for you.
Well, you can take that analogy back also with buyers. When buyers were calling us and saying, I want to see that house this afternoon, and we just went, okay, I'll be there. I mean, it would be like you calling an attorney and saying, I have a court date this afternoon, be there.
and
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
It is. That's a really
Because
good example.
many of us realtors do jump and go, yeah, sure, we're going to show you that home. And kind of to an extent, and especially during the market that we were in a few years ago, you had to go right then.
Yes.
If you want that house, we got to get over there right this moment and take a look and see if it's something you want. So you're right. That's a value that realtors bring. One of the values. Yeah.
And I think now, as realtors, we are going to step back and go, wait, I might want to know some things about you also before I spend all my time. I mean, really, you should want to know those things.
Yeah.
Are you pre-qualified? How long are you looking? I mean, you'd want to gather some
When
information.
do you want to purchase?
Yeah.
Well, and there are so many real estate scams out there today where, people are contacting you electronically. And saying, I have a lot of money I need to spend and, I need to make an offer on this property today. That's going to change.
Yeah.
That's
It
going to
will.
change. So,
That will help that cause, I
I
think.
think so too.
Yeah. Because you'll be like, I have to meet with you or I need to talk to you further. And they're going to be like, nope. And you're going to be like, red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you might not be real.
Yeah.
My sister just had one
Oh boy.
on land. And she talked to him on the phone. She had him send his driver's license with the name.
Wow.
I mean, she did her due diligence as far as she could, and then it got to the title company where the title company started looking into it, and the red flag was that he didn't want to close in person. He didn't want to do a remote notary. He's like, give me the paperwork and I will go get my own notary. And they're like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
No one has seen you in person.
Yeah.
And we're going to let you close a property and then send you a bunch of money. So,
Yeah.
And then he got very angry. And then you're like, okay, so there's your red flag. Most people would not do that. They would want you to protect them as much as you.
That's what I would say would be another value of being involved in the system. When you got, two realtors working together, you got the title company, you've got maybe inspectors, you got sort of a community of people helping you that hopefully between all of us are going to catch when there's something amiss. And we talk about wire fraud all the time, or the spammers out there. Our office has had it happen. Corey talked about this, I think, on one of the episodes where a person thought they were renting one of the properties that is available to rent through this office, and it ended up being an online scam. And so they had paid online and they showed up here to get their keys.
Oh, no.
And that wasn't a thing. Like that property wasn't up for rent. And so, when people are attempting to do things on their own and they're not engaging with the system, they just put themselves a little bit more at risk of those scams. And they are out there. And we are, like you say, we get those emails all the time and text messages and the phone calls. So,
which is another thing. I don't even know if I'm allowed to announce this, but I will. So sorry, everyone. But the board, the MLS board, today we had a board meeting, and we are bringing that Forewarn program to all the agents who are members of the Cheyenne MLS. So that is super awesome. And if you don't know about
what is that?
So Forewarn is where you can do a background check on a person by putting in their phone number, their name, whatever you have, and you put mostly their phone number, so you can check and it'll pull up. I watched the demonstration, super cool. I obviously haven't used it, so I'm not but this is how it should work. It pulls up like your rental history, if you own any properties, if they have a criminal history, if they've had bankruptcies. It should give you all that information so you know if you're working with a real person. And it's a safety thing for real estate agents, but also just time saver too, because as you said, we get calls from people and they say they're this person, or we go meet someone that we've never met, maybe in person. We've only talked to them on the phone. Now you can kind of check some things out before you spend a bunch of time.
Well, that's exciting. Your board's going to do that. That program's been around for about 10 years.
Yeah, it has. And that we've heard that people have been fighting for it for a long time.
Yeah. So that's exciting.
And you could get it yourself. And that was one of the conversations we had. As an individual agent, you can, if you're not in Cheyenne and you want this, it's like $25 a month or something as an individual agent. And I was like, I'm going to do it if our board doesn't provide that to us, because it's really awesome technology.
It is.
Good protection there. Yeah. Well, what would you say over the years, what's been your favorite thing about being an instructor and working with real estate professionals?
Oh gosh, I've got the best job in the world.
Yeah.
I really do. I get to travel around. I get to meet a lot of really, really nice people. I get to meet some very active real estate professionals, people who are doing 100, 200 sides a year. Some people who are just getting started in the business. So it's been a great ride. It really has been a great ride.
I can imagine. And really having the background of being a property manager, appraiser, sales associate, managing broker. I mean,
you've done it all.
Life's work.
Pretty much.
Do you have a favorite?
Except for mortgage lending.
Yeah.
That I haven't done.
Oh, that's funny that you mentioned that. I saw something funny on social media the other day, and they were going through all these changes, and it was a joke just saying being a real estate agent was hard, and now they feel like it's harder. And the person on there is like, I'm going to be a lender, or I'm going to be a mortgage broker. And I'm like, oh, mortgage brokers are going to be like, our job isn't easy either.
What's been your favorite out of all this, being the teacher, broker, realtor, appraiser, property manager? Has it been being the teacher?
I definitely have enjoyed, helping people to get their real estate license and helping people to continue to have a real estate license. And I get a lot of phone calls from past students, which neither of you are, but...
I know. I feel terrible about it.
Now listen to this. We're going to get in there, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
We're going to get in there for something.
Yeah, but aren't you done teaching, or are you still teaching?
No, I'm still teaching.
Okay, good.
Okay,
I knew there was someone coming, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. I get a lot of calls from past students about transactions that they're involved with, and maybe they are having a little, there's a dead end road coming up or a big blind curve coming up. And I really enjoy hearing from people that I've worked with in the past, and hearing about some of the challenges that they're having in the industry today. So, sometimes I just look back, at those questions, and I just say, gosh, that happened 30 years ago to me. So it really is fun to help people work through those challenges.
Your mom talks a lot about how real estate is just problem solving. It's a whole lot of problem solving.
Sure it is.
And while we always say that there's no two transactions that are the same, you're pointing out, there's similarities, there's some
Yeah.
lessons to be learned from all of them, and how to proceed. And again, the value of
That's
a
one of the
realtor,
values. Yes,
Yeah.
is they have that we have that experience,
or
from,
can draw from the experience of a fellow realtor.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, since you have moved to Cheyenne, what's been your favorite thing about Cheyenne?
Well, I have to say this, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but we typically leave town during Cheyenne Frontier Days.
oh, good. We wanted someone like
yeah.
that. We needed to hear from someone, because we
did.
know there's people
There's
who
like
do
two
that.
different camps of people. Those that are all in, and those that are like, what away.
Yeah.
And it seems like during Frontier Days, you hear from people that you haven't heard from for years.
Yes.
Saying, can we stay at your place?
Yes. Yes.
No, sorry, we're in Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you go to the same place every year, or new place when you leave town? You go to a
Someplace
different,
new.
yeah, someplace new. Cool.
Yeah.
That's good.
we do.
In my friend group, we were talking the other day about, like, if you decide to buy like a second property in a vacation spot or whatever, that seems good in theory, but then you're kind of locked into vacationing there, right? Every year to make good use of that property. Whereas if you Airbnb, or you look at alternative places to stay, you can travel around and you're not necessarily locked into a second location. So maybe both worlds would be good.
Well, and we looked at buying some property in Hawaii probably 10 years ago. And I just said to Dana, I said, we can stay in a lot of really nice hotels for the same price as we're paying here. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do the worry of your property being so far away.
Sure.
And just trusting. Yeah. I did property management when I first got my license, because that was kind of like my foot in the door. My mom and Corey have rentals, and we managed other people's rentals at that time. I don't think I made it 2 years. I was like, I can't do this. It's really hard to manage other people's properties and have them trust that you are. I mean, it's a lot of work. And so you have to find a property manager who's like trustworthy and checking on your property and making sure. And tenants can lie. Even though you're saying there's no pets in a property, and you went and visited it and there's no pets. And then what if there is? It's just a lot.
Well, property management is the fastest growing specialization in our industry today.
Oh, interesting.
And that's because so many people, are investing in real estate as opposed to other investment opportunities. So, and I look at property managers as really being asset managers.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just a matter of, trying to collect rent every month.
Right.
It's all the
Protecting
other
their
stuff.
asset. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just like, your stockbroker, you're expecting them to protect your assets. And so that's what the property manager should be doing.
That's a good way of putting that.
Yeah, it was not my favorite. I think you have to find somebody who's very like detail oriented and organized and
Tough skin. You
yeah.
gotta have tough skin too, to an extent.
And fair.
Yeah.
And fair. Yes.
Got to be
yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well,
So-
you kind of answered it, but go
I
ahead.
know. Oh, I have a question that I always ask everyone. If you could buy real estate and you can, but as you know, anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? We're saying money is no object. Like, where do you think, what would you buy and where?
It's hard. That is a really hard question. Hawaii is too far away for us. Florida, we've gone through a couple of hurricanes down there, so that's another tough one. I'm going to say right here in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And we have got that answer, and I agree with you. Like,
Yeah.
it's a great place to invest in real estate.
It is.
And it continues to be. So it's,
Yeah, we've learned a lot from our all of our guests. Which, how many have we had now?
we are on episode, I think you'll be episode 68.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good
so
for you.
Yes, so we have had 68 guests. We should probably go through one of these days and start. Maybe that'll be a goal for next year, Lindy. Is we'll start keeping some better statistics on the answers of some of our questions. Right?
We've had, Buck Wilson said he would buy a yacht
Yes.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
See? Oh, I know. I didn't. Some of these things I didn't think of. Someone said they'd buy maybe even like a hotel. Somewhere.
Actually,
I can't remember what that was. An
Philip-
apartment
Philip
complex
wanted-
somewhere. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of these. I'm just thinking like a home for myself. That's
Yeah.
what I kept thinking of.
Yeah.
But there were some people who
Investment.
really thought outside and were like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
The yacht one sounded really cool.
yeah.
Because
Was
you
there
could
somebody that
take
said
it.
Malaysia? Was it Malaysia? Or somebody just recently was talking, was it Nick? Someplace near China, I think. But anyway, we've had a few international ones. We've had some interesting ones like investment properties or the yacht. Most people, Wyoming.
They've said somewhere in Wyoming,
Yeah.
Jackson, near Jackson,
Maybe
near
Idaho or
Cheyenne.
Montana, you know, in this region. We've really kind of discovered that if you live in Wyoming, you're intentional about it. You're not here accidentally, or you're not here just because you're here because you want to be. And so if, you know, buying near the mountains or whatever would be the most logical second choice.
Yeah.
So I would have to agree. My only thing that I've said a few times is I would love to live near a lake. A lake would be nice, and we don't have a ton of those around in Wyoming to live near. So I'd have to probably venture out into Idaho or Colorado or something. But anyway,
Well, we have a little place up at Alcova Lake outside of Casper.
Yes.
And we were headed there tomorrow, but with the weather the way it is, I
Yeah,
don't
not
think
sure.
so. Yeah.
yeah, well, good for you. That's a great second property to have. Yeah, being near the water, I think, is the best thing. So anyway, well, thank you so much for being on today. It was a real pleasure.
Yes.
to
Is there
have you
anything
on.
we didn't ask you that you think we should have asked?
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, just to kind of summarize what the changes are going to be coming up, I don't think it's anything that's earth-shattering for anybody. Buyers just need to be prepared to sign something before they start looking at houses. And our jobs as real estate professionals is not going to change.
Right.
We're still going to provide that same service that we were providing before. There'll be a little extra paperwork
Hopefully a little
in there.
better even. Maybe
Yeah.
we explain things better.
Yeah.
Maybe we weren't doing a good job or as a whole.
It's a great point. I think that's really putting it into perspective. I think as we when we go to release this episode out to our listeners, I think that's really you're exactly right. That's the main point, is it's just going to change for buyers a little bit and how they approach the home buying process. And maybe we can make it better for them.
I hope so. Yeah.
One thing my sister, she listened in on your Zoom call yesterday, and one thing she was saying that you touched on that I think is important is we have, as real estate agents and professionals, we've tried to make it so stress-free to our clients that we don't tell them everything that we're dealing with all of the time. And maybe that's to a detriment to us, because now consumers are like, think everything's so easy.
Right. Yeah.
So she said you had mentioned something about we're going to maybe tell people all of the stuff that we do.
Well, and Kevin Beck, who is on the faculty of Steve Willoughby seminars, brought that up yesterday. And he said, you know, I have a list of 100 things that I do for buyers and 150 things that I do for sellers. He said, I'm not going to hesitate in the future to show them that list and tell them exactly what we do in the real estate transaction. So, yeah, maybe that's one of the good things that came out of the lawsuit.
Maybe it'll help inform the public more of what we do and everything that we do that's valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, the only thing I think about is I know I have clients that, you know,
We'll freak out.
yeah, or will be like, I don't need to know that. I don't want to know all these things, you know. So I think, you know, I do think we have to be explaining much more about what we're doing, but I also think we don't want to add drama to an already full pot, you know. And one example I'll give is I had a transaction where we were already delayed a couple of weeks on our closing day, and like 2 days before closing, the realtor calls me to tell me that there was some delay. It was, you know, during some of the some things that were happening over Christmas time there, and there were some delays, and getting the closing paperwork to the sellers that lived out of state was delayed. And so there was some discussion happening within the title company of moving the closing date from Friday to Monday, and we were again already a couple of weeks late. And I said to her, I'm like, when do you think you're going to know? And she's like, I'm going to know later this evening. And I chose not to say anything until I heard back from her, because why create a whole lot of stress?
Especially if it's just that evening. You're like, I can wait a few hours.
Yeah, I can wait a few hours. So you're right.
And did it change?
It did not. It worked out, and we were still able to close on Friday. So I saved them a whole lot of heartache in that moment. But you're right. Timing is probably a big part of it, and the personality of everybody. You don't want to not disclose important things that are going on. I'm not saying that. But if we can lessen some of the stress and anxiety, or at least wait and make sure that it's for real, I think that's important too. It's a balancing act.
Sure it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway. Well, thank you again for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to meet you. And now Lindy and I are committed to attending a class of yours, and we're going to enjoy it and sit in the classroom and ask good questions. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Of course.
I still prefer to do classes in person.
Yes. I would agree.
I think most people do. I got my real estate license, my salesman, and I did it online, except for the 3 days in class.
Yeah.
And then the same with my brokers. I did it in online. There actually was none the in-person ones were Zoom. Mm-hmm. And it's hard.
It is hard.
It was hard. Yeah. I think in person, just my circumstances, I had just had a baby, so that's how it worked for me. But I recommend everyone go to the actual class and interact, like you said, and you just learn much better.
Well, thank you.
So, yes, I think.
Yeah. And for all of our listeners, as you all know, Lindy and I are realtors here at Peak Properties. So if you're looking to buy or sell, we'd love to help you with that. You can find us at www.sellcheyenne.com, as well as all of our social media channels. And of course, Beyond the Front Door podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. And we hope you all learned something today and that you have a wonderful day.
Yes. And if you want to get a real estate license, you can find Steve Willoughby seminars.
Yes. We forgot to mention that. Thank you for bringing that up. So www.willoughbyseminars.com. Is that what you said,
That's
Lindy?
it.
That's it.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
The only website you need.
That's the only website. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve.
Yep. We're going to grab a picture with you.
Okay. This episode of Beyond the Front Door is brought to you by Peak Properties in Cheyenne, Wyoming. With over 75 years of combined experience in real estate, it's our goal to help clients buy and sell and save by providing the information you want and the professional services you expect. Let us help you with your residential, commercial, HUD, income-producing properties, as well as vacant land and rental needs. To learn more, visit www.sellcheyenne.com.